Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. It is Thursday, October 30th, Halloween tomorrow, of course. I'm Matt Volz. I am a senior here at Fredonia, your host this afternoon. Lots to talk about today, of course, the big matchup on the schedule on Sunday, the rematch of, once again, of course, the so-called game of the year, modern day Manning versus Brady, whatever you want to call it, as the Bills face the Chiefs. 4:25 kickoff on Sunday afternoon in Buffalo. Of course, the Bills at home against Kansas City last year. A rematch of, there's all the superlatives that you could think of that might go into it. The Chiefs are a team that they've ended Buffalo's season in 4 out of the last 5 years, including last year in the AFC Championship game, a game that the Chiefs won by 3. So obviously that's on the minds of everybody. The Bills got back on track with a huge win over the Carolina Panthers down in Charlotte on Sunday. A dominant victory, but did receive some tough injury news after that game. The Sabres are on tonight in Boston, 7 o'clock start against the Bruins. Sabres coming off of an overtime loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets at home on Tuesday night. But, not a bad performance for the Sabres, and we'll get into how they look ahead of tonight's matchup against the Bruins. Of course, as always, I'll make my picks for the upcoming week of NFL action and talk about the World Series. Of course, the Toronto Blue Jays just one win away from winning it all and securing their 3rd championship in franchise history. Game 6 of the World Series in Toronto tomorrow night if the Dodgers win Game 7 in Toronto on Saturday. But first, as always, going to talk about Fredonia sports, and we've got some playoffs to talk about, which is always exciting as both men's and women's soccer teams, both teams have clinched the playoffs in the SUNYAC. The men's soccer team 7-6-4 overall, 4-4-1 in conference play. They finished up the regular season with a scoreless tie at home against Oswego on Saturday. They have qualified for the SUNYAC playoffs as the 6th and final seed. So how the conference playoffs work, it's very similar to how the NFL playoffs were structured before the addition of the 7th seed. So 6 teams get in to the playoffs. The number 1 and number 2 seeds both receive first round byes, and then the number 3 seed hosts the number 6 and the 4 hosts the number 5. So this year in men's soccer, Cortland ran away with the top seed, Buff State finishing 2nd. They get the first round byes. In the points, a 3-way tie between Plattsburgh, New Paltz, and Oneonta. On tiebreakers, Plattsburgh comes away with the number 3 seed. New Paltz gets the 4, Oneonta the 5, and Fredonia the last team in as the number 6 seed. Oswego, Morrisville, Canton, and Potsdam all miss the conference playoffs. So how it's going to work, Cortland and Buff State both are receiving first-round byes. Fredonia will travel to Plattsburgh, and New Paltz will host Oneonta in the first round of the SUNYAC playoffs. And that game is on Saturday at 2 p.m. The Blue Devils at Plattsburgh. If Fredonia wins, they will have a much, much shorter journey to travel in the second round of the playoffs, as they would head just up the 90 to Buffalo to face Buff State in round 2. So again, that game Saturday at 2 p.m. at Plattsburgh. Women's soccer also qualifying for the SUNYAC playoffs. A terrific season for women's soccer, the best season they've had in a handful of years. 9-5-4 overall. A dominant stretch in conference play, 6-2-1, and the Blue Devils only lost 1 game at home all season. Only 1 loss at home. That was back on September 16th, a 1-0 loss against Penn State Behrend. Just an incredible stretch in conference play. They finish off the regular season on a 3-game win streak, and across those 3 games, the Blue Devils outscored their opponents 11-1. A 4-0 win over Potsdam back on October 18th, a 5-0 win at Morrisville on the 22nd, and this past Saturday, finishing off the regular season at Oswego with a 2-1 win. The Blue Devils finish in 3rd place in SUNYAC play, so they will be at home in the first round of the playoffs, taking on the team they ended the regular season against, Oswego. So Cortland, again, receiving the number 1 seed. Plattsburgh gets the 2 seed. They finish just 1 point ahead of Fredonia. So Cortland and Plattsburgh receiving the first round byes. Fredonia gets the 3 seed. Buff State is the 4. New Paltz the 5 seed, and Oswego is the last team in for women's soccer as the number 6 seed. Oneonta, Potsdam, Morrisville, and Canton all missed the SUNYAC playoff. What a rough season for Canton. 0-9 in conference play. Won just 1 game. They did actually, they finished the year with a non-conference win. So if they finished the year at 1-17, a brutal year for Canton in just their second season in the SUNYAC. But again, Cortland and Plattsburgh will have the first round byes. Fredonia will host Oswego, and Buff State will host New Paltz. If the Blue Devils win, they will be heading up north to Plattsburgh in the second round of the playoffs. And that game at the same time as the men's game, 2 p.m. right here at University Stadium against Oswego. Again, with a win, they will go on the road. It is possible that the Blue Devils could host the SUNYAC championship game if they beat Oswego in this game, go up to Plattsburgh and beat them, and if Cortland loses to the winner of the Buff State New Paltz game, then Fredonia would be at home in the SUNYAC championship. And again, those games on Saturday, so very exciting to watch. And you know, I started the show 3 years ago, and that season, the 2022-2023 academic year, Fredonia only had 1 team qualify for SUNYAC playoffs. That's in sports where not every team makes it, you know. And so the only team that made it that year was the hockey team. They made it in as the 6th and final seed, and then they were shut out at Geneseo in their first round matchup. So the progression from where we were 3 years ago to where we are now, it's really impressive to see just how far Fredonia athletics have come in the last couple of years. And in some sports, they are a threat in the SUNYAC. They really are. You know, women's soccer, they have as good of a chance as anybody to win the whole thing. And even though men's soccer is the 6th seed, they could go on the road and beat Plattsburgh. They absolutely could. Remember, Fredonia, so the men's team is at Plattsburgh. The men's team beat Plattsburgh earlier in the year. Now, granted, that game was here instead of being at Plattsburgh, but back on September 20th, Fredonia beat Plattsburgh 1-0. And for the women's team, they're playing Oswego, who they just beat in the last game of the season. So, both of these teams look to be in pretty good spots. Obviously not guaranteeing anything. We have to see how the weekend matchups go. But I think both teams could potentially be in very good spots. Another team playing well is the volleyball team, and they've still got a little while to go in the regular season. They are 10-12 overall, which does not jump off the page. But how about a 5-2 conference record so far? They have been great in SUNYAC play. And they started off SUNYAC play with back-to-back road losses, losing 3-1 at Morrisville and losing in straight sets at Cortland. Since then, The Blue Devils haven't lost. And across those they're on a 5-game win streak. Across those 5 wins, they have lost just 3 sets total. We talked last week about how they were on a 9-set win streak, as of course they had beaten back on October 8th. They beat Buff State in straight sets. Then they had the weekend sweep 2 weekends ago where they took down Canton and Oswego, both at home, both in straight sets. Not straight sets last weekend up north in the state, but coming away with 2 wins. Last Friday at Potsdam, Fredonia got off to a great start. They won the first set 25-17, took the second set 25-19. Third and fourth sets, they ran into some trouble. Third set, they lost 25-16. Fourth set went the distance, losing 30-28. And then in the winner-take-all number 5 seed, the Blue Devils prevailed 15-10 to take that one 3-2. Saturday at Plattsburgh, again, Fredonia with a good start, taking the first set 25-19, dropping the second set 25-21, and then the third set winning it 25-21, and then the fourth set went down to the wire, and they take it 25-23 to seal the win. 5 wins in a row for women's volleyball. They have 4 games left on the regular season schedule. They are at home for what is actually their last conference matchup of the regular season. They are at home against Oneonta at 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then 3 non-conference matchups all at home. Every game that the Blue Devils have for the rest of the... they have a game Friday. So the Blue Devils have 5 games left. All 5 of them are at home. They play tomorrow night at 6 o'clock against New Paltz, Saturday at 1 against Oneonta. Those are their last 2 SUNYAC games of the regular season. Next Wednesday, a non-conference matchup at home against Hilbert at 6 o'clock. And then next Saturday, November 8th, the Blue Devils hosting the Fredonia State Tri-Match as RIT and John Carroll will come to Fredonia. Blue Devils will face RIT at 11 o'clock a.m. John Carroll and RIT will play each other at 1 p.m. And then the day will finish with the Blue Devils taking on John Carroll at 3 o'clock. So where we stand in SUNYAC play, again, still a handful of games left. Cortland has already locked up the number 1 seed thanks to a 7-0 start in conference play. So they are the number 1 seed. Oswego has clinched a playoff spot. And Fredonia, and I'd have to double check the math, but I believe, and again, don't quote me on this, but Fredonia could clinch a playoff spot this weekend, depending on how the games against New Paltz and Oneonta go. Right now, Oneonta and New Paltz, both teams that are in playoff spots. So Plattsburgh, Potsdam, and Canton have all been eliminated. So right now, and again, it's the same thing where the top 2 get first-round byes, and then 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. So right now, you have New Paltz, you have Oneonta. So for Cortland number 1, Oswego second. Right now, Fredonia solidly in third. And then you have Buff State, Oneonta, and New Paltz all at 4 and 3 in conference play. Buff State's also on a hot streak. They've won 4 in a row. And Morrisville hanging on at 3 and 4. So if the Blue Devils can take care of business this weekend, they'll clinch a conference playoff spot. And again, a little while to go in the regular season still, but looking to be in pretty good shape playoff-wise. SUNYAC championships this weekend for men's and women's cross country, those up at Plattsburgh. The men's race getting started at noon, and the women's race looking to get started. So the women's race starts first. Women's race begins at 11 a.m., and the men's race beginning at noon. Again, the women's team, presumably, they haven't had a scoring team this season, so it's really going to be up to individual performance. The men's team, however, does have a scoring team. So we'll see how those go. Again, the men's race and the men's race begins at noon. Women's race kicks it off at 11 a.m. The regional cross-country championships taking place up in Rochester. Of course, Fredonia hosted that meet last year. The regional championships on Saturday, November 15th for both men's and women's cross-country. Swim and dive also underway in their season. The men's team off to an 0-3 start, but a very close meet. Very close last weekend against... They were at Baldwin Wallace, hosted by Baldwin Wallace, Allegheny College, also there. But the Blue Devils end up Baldwin Wallace is a phenomenal program for swim and dive. Fredonia falls to them 160-32. Really, really close between Fredonia and Allegheny. Ultimately, just 4 points separating the two, 66-62. Allegheny takes that one. The men's team off this weekend. They are in action next on Saturday, November 8th with a tri-meet at home where they will host the University of Rochester and Alfred University. Women's swim and dive, after they started the year with a win, they have lost back-to-back, losing to both Baldwin Wallace and Allegheny last weekend. Again, the women's team at home for a tri-meet on Saturday, November 8th against the University of Rochester and Alfred University. Hockey is back this weekend for Fredonia, too. They've played 2 exhibition games. They played a game at Buff State last week, and this past Saturday, they played an exhibition game here against Chatham. The regular season begins tomorrow night. As Potsdam comes to town, the Blue Devils will host Potsdam in a back-to-back tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and Saturday at 4 p.m. I will be on the call for Friday night's game, not Saturday. I am going to the Sabres game. Sorry, Fredonia. But the Blue Devils begin their regular season tomorrow night. You can watch that game on FredoniaBlueDevils.com. You can find that live stream as the regular season begins for Fredonia in some early conference games to kick off the regular season. Basketball also getting closer to starting. Their seasons haven't started yet. Men's season begins next week, next Wednesday, with a 7 p.m. matchup at Dieuville up in Buffalo. Their regular season home opener is on Wednesday, November 12th, hosting Hilbert at 7:30. Women's basketball, they did play a scrimmage game against Algonquin from Canada last Saturday. They have a scrimmage at home against Penn State Barron on Saturday at 4 o'clock. Their regular season begins next Friday, November 7th at 6 p.m. as they host Thiel. So we're sort of in that transitional period where we're going from, fall sports haven't quite wrapped up yet, and winter sports are just kicking off. We're going to take a short break, and when I come back, going to talk about the World Series. The Toronto Blue Jays just one win away from securing their first championship since 1993. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports this afternoon on WCVF 88.9 FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9 FM. Do you like local music? Do you like reading zines? What if I told you there's something for you right here on campus? Rock a Little is an independent music zine based out of Fredonia. If you see a pocket-sized zine lying around campus, pick it up and take it home with you. You'll read articles covering local music releases, local shows, and other concerts in the area. Published once a month, Rock a Little also features interviews with people involved in the local music scene. For more information and updates, you can find Rock a Little on Instagram at rockalittle.zine. And that, they really are... They really actually are pocket sized. Like they're kind of cool. I happen to know the individual who publishes Rock a Little, and it's really cool. It's actually a really cool thing. I highly recommend picking it up and giving it a look. Well, the World Series is coming down to the wire. Game 6 of the Fall Classic tomorrow night in Toronto, as the Toronto Blue Jays are one win away from securing their first World Series since 1993. Series was tied at 2 games apiece heading into Game 5 in LA last night. And how about the performance from Blue Jays pitcher Trey Yesavage? So Trey Yesavage is a guy, he was the first-round pick of the Blue Jays just a couple of years ago. And so Trey Yesavage he's a rookie this year, obviously. He was pitching he was pitching for Buffalo, obviously, the Bisons. But he was pitching not just in the minor leagues this year, because that tends to happen to a handful of players. Trey Yesavage, the way he has just sort of skyrocketed after starting the year in single A. This is a guy who started the season playing A ball. That is 3 levels below Major League Baseball. He started the year pitching in Jupiter, Florida, pitching for the Blue Jays single A affiliate in Dunedin. And according to an article on ESPN's website, there were 327 fans in that stadium. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So Trey Yesavage started the year down there. He was the number 20 overall pick in last year's MLB draft. And to remind you, this isn't high A either. This is single A. So he goes from single A to high A, then to double A, then to triple A, then to big leagues. It's insane. And he pitched a little bit for Buffalo this year as well in triple A. The meteoric rise of Trey Yesavage has been unbelievable. And this season for the Blue Jays has sort of been a year of, it's not just Vlad Guerrero. It's not just Vladdy dominating. It's not just 1 or 2 good pitchers. It's an entire team effort. Like Cole Schneider has been on point for the Jays this year. Ernie Clement was amazing early in the series and in their ALCS against the Mariners. This is a team that I don't know that there was a ton of hype surrounding the Jays going into this year, especially because, they were in the division. They're in the division with the Orioles, who had such a great season last year. And they were in the division with the Yankees, who had made it to the World Series last year. And the Red Sox. The Jays were in a division with 3 playoff teams from last year. And the only one who wasn't a playoff team is the Tampa Bay Rays, who was also a solid team. From the toughest division in baseball, I don't know that a lot of people were necessarily super high on the Blue Jays going into this season. And the way things have come together, when I made my World Series predictions, whether it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was last week, I said I thought the Blue Jays were going to win it in 7 games. And the Blue Jays might win it in 6. It has been, the ALCS, watching that I would have been happy with either team winning, because obviously the Mariners are the only team in baseball who has never been to the World Series. So I would have been happy to see them win too. They had an amazing season. But watching this Blue Jays team, there is a special sort of vibe around the Blue Jays. And I don't want to jinx them going into their last 2 games, of course, but it just feels like the Jays' year. It does. And it's that sort of vibe that I don't know that you can explain. It's the vibe that I think a lot of people started to feel when if you think back to 2019, when the Nationals were a wild card team and had made it all the way to the World Series. I think some people started feeling that for the Nats in the World Series, that this could be their year. And now I'll admit that feeling has been wrong. I thought 2022 was the Phillies' year. I thought they were going to go and win it. But it's just, I don't know. The Jays are a team that I think a lot of the baseball world is rooting for. They may even have some division rivals rooting for them. And I think it would be awesome for baseball if the Blue Jays won the World Series. I really do. And, so of course, Game 6 tomorrow night in Toronto. Game 7, if the Dodgers win, will be on Saturday. And I'm obviously very much rooting for Toronto. Former sports director Parker Gurnett is a huge Blue Jays fan. And I can't even imagine what he must be feeling knowing that his baseball team is one win away from winning their first World Series in our lifetimes, which is just amazing. And it's a feeling that I would really like to feel someday, because I was just starting to get into baseball when the Cardinals won the World Series in 2011. So I don't fully have that memory of the Cardinals being that close to a championship. So obviously, I think everybody in the baseball world is hoping for the best for the Jays. Again, Game 6 tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on Fox from the Rogers Center in Toronto. If the Dodgers win, Game 7 will be on Saturday night, again, 8 p.m. on Fox at the Rogers Center in Toronto. Going to take a short break, and when I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Sabres ahead of their matchup tonight in Boston against the Bruins, and of course the rest of the show talking about the Bills, previewing the huge matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs, and making my picks for the upcoming week of NFL action. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports. Are the Buffalo Sabres back? That's a question that I think a lot of people are wondering. It's a question that I am wondering. Sabres are coming off of back-to-back losses, but both of those losses, you had an overtime loss in Toronto against the Leafs last Saturday, and then losing in overtime to the Columbus Blue Jackets on Tuesday. So Buffalo has gotten points in six of their last 7 games after starting 0-3 and being outscored 10-2 in those 3 games. The Sabres have only had 1 game out of their last 7. Yeah, 1 game out of their last 7 that they have not gotten points from. 4-4-2 through the Sabres' first 10 games of the year. And it's obviously still very early, but I don't know. And back-to-back losses is obviously tough, but I personally thought that the Sabres were the better team against Columbus on Tuesday night. They were down 1-0 heading into the second. They had a really bad first. I mean, the first period was not great for the Sabres. I thought they played phenomenal hockey in the second and third. And then Miles Wood, who actually his dad was a Buffalo Sabres. Father Randy Wood played for the Sabres. Miles Wood scored both the tying goal late in the third and scored the overtime winner, where Buffalo defensively not great on the game-winning goal sequence. But overall, the Sabres sitting at 4-4-2. They have 10 points. A very, very, and again, this is another symptom of it being so early in the year, a very, very close bunch in the Atlantic Division, and a good bunch, too. In fact, the Sabres' opponent tonight, the Boston Bruins, are the only team in the division below 500. You have Montreal with 16 points, Detroit with 14, then Florida, Ottawa, and Toronto all with 11, and Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and Boston all with 10. Remember, the Bruins have actually played 2 more games than both Buffalo and Tampa. The Sabres and Lightning both with 4-4-2 records. The Bruins 5-7. I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself, especially because the Sabres have not won a game on the road yet this year. They are 0-2-1 in road games so far this season. But it does feel somewhat different this season. Now, when I was watching the game on Tuesday night, I found it. I actually had laundry to do downstairs. I found it very, very difficult, nearly impossible to pull myself away from the game, even for a minute. Now, the last handful of years, as loyal of a Sabres fan as I am, it's like I'll have the game on in the background, but a lot of times I'm sort of doing something else because they've been miserable. But I was actively engaged. I was fully engulfed in the Sabres game, and I sort of had this feeling, I'm like, is this what it's like to support a team who's really good? And again, now, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. I'm not going to come on here and say that the Sabres are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Obviously, I hope they do, but I'm not going to throw that out into the universe. I'm not going to make that prediction because I have a very good chance of being hilariously wrong. But I do think this is the team that could end the playoff drought. And I emphasize the word could. I'm not saying they will. It is still really early in the season. The Sabres still have 72 games left to play this season. They've got 6 months of hockey left. But I think this is a team that effort-wise, it's not the same as it was last year. I saw a team on Tuesday night that was going after every loose puck in the corner, winning those battles, staying at home defensively, generating chances on the rush, and not just throwing the puck into the corner and immediately going to the bench for a change. I saw a team that just looked a little bit different. And even if it's a team that is maybe not, doesn't boast talent to it, this is the most enjoyment that I have gotten from watching the Sabres in 3 years. The last time I enjoyed watching the Sabres this much was their 22-23 season when they missed the playoffs by 1 point. I honestly feel that. And I think there's excitement for the Sabres, but it's very cautious, as it should be. It's very cautious because we don't fully know what to expect. It's still, I think, too early. Now, if they're still playing like this and they go on a run in the month of November, I think you could realistically say, all right, this team looks like a playoff team. That's what I feel in the back of my mind right now. But I'm not going to jump on, oh, we're going to do it. I believe in this group. I think they are sort of learning to win together. And I think, the last few years the focus has been kind of on development. Now it's time to show what these guys can do. And for a lot of them, they have. Like, Josh Doan has been incredible for the Sabres so far this year. He's quickly become one of my favorite players on the team. Michael Kesselring made his Sabres debut. He's the other guy the Sabres got from Utah in the J.J. Peterka trade along with Doan. He had been injured, played his first game as a Sabre on Tuesday against Columbus. I thought he was excellent. I thought he played a very good game. I thought really as a whole, I thought the Sabres defense looked good. I know at the end of the day they gave up 4 goals and lost, but I didn't think the Sabres defense looked bad in this game. And the other part of the equation has been the fact that the Sabres have gotten some really rock-solid goaltending from Alex Lyon. He's been Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, of course, missed the first little bit of the season with injury, played his first game of the season in Toronto on Saturday. I missed this game, but I heard from a lot of people who watched it that he did not look particularly good. Alex Lyon has been rock solid in net for Buffalo. And, of course, Colton Ellis played the one game. He played the game against Detroit last Wednesday, and he was great in that game, a game that was a 4-2 win for Buffalo. He was excellent. So upcoming games for the Sabres, they are on the road tonight. They're at Boston at 7 o'clock. And then 3 straight home games. Saturday against the Capitals at 7 o'clock. I am going to be at that game. I'm very excited for it. Tuesday at home against Utah, which I might be at that game too. And then Thursday of next week, they host the St. Louis Blues. So fingers crossed, we'll see that. And then the Sabres will have a road trip. They have 4 straight road games as they go to Carolina, Utah, Colorado, and Detroit, and then return home November 17th to face the Edmonton Oilers. Watching this Buffalo team, it just has a little bit of a different feel to it. And again, we've got a lot more to go in the season, but I don't think the Sabres are off to a bad start at all. I think their first 3 games were brutal. 4-0 loss to the Rangers and then back-to-back 3-1 losses to Boston and Colorado. I didn't think they played well at all in those 3 games. Since then, even in their loss to Montreal, where they lost 4-2, didn't look particularly great. I think they, and I'm not gonna, make a crazy bold claim, but I think that they have the potential to be a really solid team, and we'll see that. Hopefully they can get back in the win column tonight against the Boston Bruins at 7 o'clock. Going to take a short break and then come back and finish off the show talking about the Bills and the Chiefs and make my picks for Week 9 of the NFL season. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to Big Blue Sports, a huge game on Sunday. The Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs in Buffalo. The Chiefs 5-3, the Bills 5-2. The Chiefs are favored in Buffalo. The Chiefs 2.5-point favorites going into the game. Kansas City has looked great. They have won. They've been off to a phenomenal, they've been on a great stretch after a 2-3 start to the season. Kansas City has won 3 straight. And again, in the last 2 in particularly dominating fashion. This is a huge game. And something that I have been hearing this week that I'm honestly, that just drives me nuts. So, of course, the last handful of years have sort of followed the same script. The Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season and then lose to them in the playoffs. That sort of happened, just about every year. So I keep hearing some fans saying the Bills should lose this game because then that way we're going to beat them in the playoffs. Or this game doesn't matter until, no, it doesn't matter until we beat them in the playoffs. Okay, so using that logic, if the Bills, you realize if the Bills lose this game, we lose out on the tiebreaker to the Chiefs, which then likely means that if we meet in the playoffs, we'd have to go there where we have lost to them 3 times. I get it, we also lost to them once at home, but that was also a game where the Bills were down to their 6th and 7th string linebackers. I think that it's one of the dumbest takes that I have heard. is that nothing matters until nothing in the regular season matters until the Bills win in the playoffs. Yeah, obviously the playoffs matter more, but regular season wins are important too. This game is huge for Buffalo. You know, they lost those back-to-back primetime games against the Patriots and the Falcons. And there's a lot of people that are sort of saying, oh, Buffalo's done. You know, oh, New England's got Drake May. Drake May's the next coming of Tom Brady, and the Patriots are going to dominate for the next 20 years. I think Drake May's good. I think Drake May's definitely going to be a threat. Is he as good as Tom Brady was? No. And I get sick and tired of people talking about, oh, yep, New England, they've got Tom Brady 2.0, and, you know, the Bills are going to fall apart, and New England's going to be the kings of everything again. No. I may be in the minority here, but I still think the Bills are a better team than the Patriots are. I know we lost. I know the Bills lost to New England. I'm well aware of that. I watched the game. It was a terrible performance. Do I think the Bills need to prove that they're better than New England? You bet. But I think they are. And I think they might be better than the Chiefs. And I think, that's a crazy take. The Chiefs have been playing great football the last few weeks. But I think that this game is Buffalo's chance to slam the door on all that nonsense and say, no, we're still here. And I don't want to hear what any of y'all are saying, because we haven't gone anywhere. We got punched in the mouth back-to-back weeks on primetime. We ain't going anywhere. And I think that is what's definitely on the line for this game. Now, I will say Buffalo's, they've got some weaknesses. Buffalo's downfield passing game has been non-existent. And whether that's poor play scheming and play calling by Joe Brady, or whether that's the fact that none of the Bills' receivers can ever get open, besides maybe Kincaid or Shakir sometimes. That's why I think the Bills need to go out and add a receiver at the deadline. Somebody who's actually good. I'm not trying to slam the Bills' receivers, but I love Keon Coleman, but there's way too many times where Keon can't get any separation and he can't get open at all. And it seems like the only time Buffalo's able to roll with their passing game is on, a screen to Shakir or something like that. With Josh Allen, that's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that you can't figure out a way to get open and provide a downfield passing threat for Josh Allen. That's why I think the Bills need to go out. Again, the deadline next week. I think the Bills absolutely need to go out and add a wide receiver. And, I think that in the same tone, you got to keep leaning into the run game. And for 216 yards against Carolina on Sunday in a 40-9 win. The Bills' defense also was a huge part of that, with 3 takeaways and 7 sacks. Defense was great. And I've sort of said the last, both of those losses, I put more on the offense than the defense, and I still stand by that. Because the defense allowed 23 points to New England, and 24 to Atlanta? You've got an offense with Josh Allen at quarterback. You should be scoring 27 to 30 a game. And the offense was horribly disjointed and out of sync in both of those games. So it just, it sort of reinforces that mentality that the only team that can really beat the Bills is the Bills, because they beat themselves. Last week was a great game in Carolina, but this week they've got to prove that they're still here and they're still a threat in the AFC. And I think that's going to rely on, you've got to get James Cook the ball a lot. He's got to have a lot of carries. And you've got to open things up with the downfield passing game. Somebody's got to come through and get open. And defensively, of course, the Bills losing Ed Oliver long-term hurts. But the rest of that Bills defensive line, they've got to step up. And they looked great against Carolina on Sunday. Michael Hoyt playing his first game as a Bill was awesome. He's got to keep that up. Deion Walker has had a phenomenal start to his rookie season. He's got to keep that up. I really think that in order for the Bills to come away with a win, I think, and I can hear my mom at home saying the Bills need to score more points than the Chiefs to come away with a win. But specifically, I think the offense, you've got to have long drives where you're controlling the clock. I think James Cook needs probably 20 carries in this game. And defensively, you've got to put pressure on Mahomes, and I think the defense is going to have to come away with at least 2 takeaways. I think those are the 2 big things. If you get James Cook rolling, and if your defense can halt some Kansas City drives with some takeaways, then I think the Bills could be in good shape on Sunday. I'll take the last couple of minutes of the show to make my picks for the week. Tonight's game at 8:15, the Ravens in Miami against the Dolphins. Lamar Jackson is expected to play tonight. He's been out since very early in the season with a hamstring injury. The Ravens 2-5, and or gets the win. Lamar comes back and gets him the win in that one. 1 o'clock matchups, the Bears and Bengals in Cincinnati. Both teams coming off of pretty embarrassing losses, with the Bears falling to the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens and the Bengals losing to the Jets. I think, this one I think can honestly go either way. I'm going to pick Cincinnati to get the win at home. Vikings and Lions in Detroit. The Vikings quarterback situation is a mess right now. I'm going to take the Lions. Carolina at Green Bay. Carolina looked rough last week. I think they keep this game closer than people think, but I do think the Packers get the win. Chargers at Titans in Tennessee. The Chargers looked great last Thursday night. I think they keep it rolling with a win. Falcons at Patriots. Call me a hater, but I don't believe in the Patriots as much as a lot of other people do. I do think they win this game, but I think this one is close between them and Atlanta. And plus, Atlanta is impossible to pick this season. The other 1 o'clock game, San Francisco at the Giants. The Giants in the post-Cam Scatterbo era. The 49ers are injured, though. I think the Giants get the win. I think the Giants come out and get a win for Cam Scatterbo. The Colts in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. Colts 7-1, a dominant start. Indianapolis gets the win. They go to 8-1. Broncos and Texans in Houston. I think this game is a beatdown. I really, really like Denver. I think they're very good. I think the Broncos get the win. Into our 4 o'clock games, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Las Vegas Raiders. In Vegas, I think the Jags get the win in that one. Saints and Rams in LA. The Saints are atrocious. I'm going to pick the Rams. We'll come back to the Bills game Sunday night. Seattle and Washington in Washington. Of course, the Commanders don't know if they're going to have Jaden Daniels back. I'm going to pick the Commanders, though. I think Washington gets the win. They rebound at home. And then Monday Night Football, Arizona at Dallas. The Cowboys need to get back on track in this game, and I think they do with a win. Chiefs and Bills. This is a massive game, 4:25 on CBS. How could I not pick Buffalo in this game? I think this is going to be a very, very tight game. I'm going to pick Buffalo to win this game 27-23. That's my pick, 27-23. The Bills win it. That is all for Big Blue Sports this afternoon. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, as well as everyone at the station who makes this show possible. Have a wonderful and safe Halloween, and we will catch you all next week. We'll catch you then.